Hi, and welcome to this episode of Maggie's Mindful Moments. I'm Maggie Kelly. I am your host for the moment, anyway. I'm here today. Today's episode is called Freaking Out is Good News, or in other words, losing your footing is okay. So, as you walk this spiritual path, you're probably going to notice that you start to feel a little uneasy and you're losing your footing. You might even sense that you're sort of losing your internal reference point. You know, that place where we typically go to secure our sense of self. Just notice, though, that when we start to do this and that starts to happen, it's very destabilizing. But once you get a genuine glimpse that looking at the negative, confronting yourself, confronting your pain and your discomfort, once you start to realize that all of that is part of the path to your enlightenment, that's actually the entry point to your awakening. Mostly we think that whatever we're doing will be a confirmation of the framework we already have in our minds about life. But enlightenment isn't like that. We start to feel a little shaky, a little unstable. We start to freak out. But that's actually a good sign. That's a sign that things are starting to break loose. When you notice that your reactions are starting to get a little bit out of proportion with the situation at hand, it's actually an indicator that you're trying to get your reference point back. And the reason you're trying to get your reference point back is because you're starting to lose them. And it's uncomfortable because it's unfamiliar. And we feel as though we've somehow begun to lose our footing, like we're no longer on stable ground. So when this begins to happen, you actually start to find yourself grasping and clinging and looking for something to hold on to or hook onto so that you feel a little more stable. But when you get stuck in the past, it's actually your way of not being present to the very moment in your life. We kind of struggle and kick and fight this state of groundlessness because it's not comfortable. It feels unfamiliar. So my advice is allow yourself to feel the anxiety. Allow yourself to feel the groundlessness. Instead of fighting it, allow it. The anxiety and discomfort is what's beginning to show you that you can actually live a much more profound life in a much deeper state of being than you might have ever experienced before. We squirm because we want to fit it into our egoic box. We do this with everything. It's not just spirituality. It's everything. We want everything to sort of fit the way our mind thinks it's supposed to fit. And our problem is actually the way that we try to fit everything into how we already are and how we've always done things before. So my suggestion is to allow yourself to let go of what you think now and let go of what you think you know. Perhaps it's about letting go of the feeling that you've already known, that's the way it's supposed to look like and the way it's supposed to turn out, or maybe that's exactly what you need to let go of in order to begin your process of awakening. Consider that possibly what you're holding on to might actually be the very thing that's keeping you from getting on the path to progress further and grow more. So the practices that we embark on through Maggie's Mindful Moments or Life Illuminated podcast or anything that you might have seen me doing are really about learning how to live a life that is that's not based on personal territory and ego and self-aggrandizement. That's where the freedom lies. The freedom lies in not living there. That's where the ultimate gift resides. There's nothing wrong with the world that we're living in or what's going on in any one of our lives. I can't tell you how many of my clients who I see you can see a genuine sense of relief in them when I say that, when I say there's nothing wrong with you. It's like no one's ever told them that before. Like, Like we perpetually live in a state of thinking there's something wrong with me or there's something wrong with this. We're stuck because we keep trying to be somebody solid and definitive. We keep trying to maintain some sense of personal identity in the face of our lives, and we crave certainty. And we're really not too good about living in uncertainty. It's really a challenge to allow yourself to open to life genuinely. But until you're willing to let go of that grip on yourself, you're not going to be able to experience a sense of fundamental openness in your life. Feeling anxious and freaking out is totally normal. It's certainly not comfortable, but it's actually a good sign that you're starting to evolve. So instead, start to ask yourself, what does it feel like to be uncertain? Why does it feel like losing your footing is a bad thing? What does it feel like to lose your footing? What does it feel like not to be in control? Start inquiring into those questions. Use them, the answers, as your teacher, and see if you can stay with the intensity of your feelings without separating from them or trying to run away or disconnect. And don't begin to blame the world around you because you feel like life is really intense. Anxiety is actually a mark that reality is beginning to break through your shell. Anxiety is good news, even though it sometimes can be extremely overwhelming. The more you try to stay with the feelings and don't try to run from them, the better. Everything's going to come up. Everything. Sit down with each of the situations, and what you learn is every single state of mind that your life produces that comes up in you, however off the chart it could be, is a journey for you to work through. So all of the muck is good, right? If you're completely present and you don't try to attempt to run away from your feelings, there's a tremendous amount of transformation waiting to happen. And if you stay with it, it's incredibly beneficial to have those states of minds. It's like Thich Nhat Hanh wrote a book and often says, no mud, no lotus, right? You have to have the muck and the stuff, the pond, the dirty, murky pond, get unsettled so that you can actually grow that beautiful lotus flower. So when I'm caught up in my habitual ways of being, it's hard for me to grow. But if I let myself be with them and I don't judge them and I start inquiring into them, somehow that allows them to penetrate me and help me learn the lessons that they're here to share with me. And trust me, there's a lot to learn. So negative states of mind are actually potent avenues of transformation. So don't try to avoid them because you'll miss the gold. Your whole life will change when you realize that this so-called negative is actually the biggest, greatest, largest avenue for your transformation. It's the access to the transformation that you actually most deeply want. And there's a long way to go. So be patient and be kind and gentle and compassionate with yourself. When we begin to live by relating to our emotions directly and not judging them or running away from them, we begin living on a totally different level. You're no longer living in terms of what you think about life or how you strategize or what you're going to do tomorrow or how you did it last week. And instead, you're going to realize the immediacy of your life. And that immediacy contains everything you need. You're no longer able, ultimately, to fit anything into that conditioned way of thinking anymore. Nothing fits anymore. Your life starts to become way more open than that, and you become more expansive. But in that, you might become anxious because the way you've done it has been all you've ever known. So just settle in. This then becomes the practice of learning how to just sort of dwell in and feel comfortable in the fire of transformation. Every situation and every emotion is part of that fire of transformation. But because of our ego, we usually retreat from it. And because we don't like the discontinuity of it. And see if you can catch yourself and begin to identify what you might be hanging on to and see if you can let it go. And remember that chaos is the reality beginning to break through your ego system, your security system that is your ego. Chaos is good news. Losing your footing is good news. Expect that your life is going to feel a bit unsettled, because quite honestly, did you really get into this whole idea so that everything would stay the same? I don't think so. So just allow the space of the murky water to settle. You might think you can't live without those old reference points and those conditioned ways of being, the ways you've done things always in the past, but the fact is you can live without them. And you're going to start to realize that living without them is what you've been looking for the whole time. That's where the liberation is. That's where the freedom is. So if you're freaking out and you feel edgy and you feel like the silence is deafening, you're on the right track. You're on the right path. So settle into the chaos and the uncertainty and enjoy the ride. And join me for private one-on-one spiritual life coaching sessions. And I'll see if I can assist you along the path to your awakening and into the fire of transformation. I offer sessions in person, over the phone, or by Zoom. And if you've enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, and by all means, rate and review and add your comments. I'd love to hear from you. And until then, have a beautiful day. Take care.